Hello Africa, it is Wednesday, the 18th day of October 2017. Good evening, my name is Yusuf Ibrahim. You're right in time for your Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa. Kenya is now exactly 1 week away from the presidential rerun slated for October 26th. But the main question is that election even going to take place? These after Raila Odinga NASA's leader withdrew from the race, and today Dr. Roslyn Akombe resigned as an IEBC commissioner before fleeing to the US. We have all the latest from right here in Kenya. We're also going to link up with Kakai Kissinger, who's going to come to us all the way from Monrovia, where Liberia is also preparing for their own presidential runoff. Once again, welcome to the program. First things first, let's take a look at Africa in 60 seconds.
But all my motions have been defeated by a majority of the commissioners.
Fresh turmoil within the IEBC as a commissioner quits while the chairman cast doubt over his ability to deliver credible poll. Voters in Liberia sharing their expectations of their new president as the country prepares for a presidential runoff. President Robert Mugabe orders a ban on importation of fruits to help boost production by local farmers. And Sierra Leone rolls out an oral cholera vaccination initiative in a country with one of the highest infection rates in Africa. Welcome once again. If you're just joining us, the program begins right now. In our Twitter poll tonight, we are asking you, should the Kenyan presidential election be postponed? Let me just take that again. Should the Kenyan presidential election be postponed? You know the drill. Our Twitter handle is at KTN News. You can as well tweet me at Yusuf Ibra. Always remember to use the hashtag Bottomline Africa, and I'm going to go through some of your feedback within the program. And tonight we have Ambassador Jack Tumo in studio. He's a former ECK commissioner. I'm also going to link up with Mr. Peter Alingo. He's going to come to us all the way from Kakamega. He's an election expert. I'm also going to talk to Mr. Felix Odhiambo, who's an election expert, as well as Javas Bigambo, who is a governor's expert. Now, let's begin from right here in Kenya, where heads are rolling in Kenya tonight after the chairman of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that is IEBC, issued what he referred to as a yellow card to the country's political players ahead of next week's repeat presidential election. Now, in a strongly worded statement, Wafula Chebukati considered that he could not guarantee that the poll will be credible, citing political interference, which has led to deep divisions within the commission. He also appealed to IEBC staff adversely mentioned or blamed for the bungled August 8th election to resign. The latest twist cast fresh doubt whether the election shall go on as scheduled next Thursday.
I've made several attempts to make critical changes, but all my motions have been defeated by a majority of the commissioners. Under such conditions, it's difficult to guarantee free, fair, and credible elections. Without critical changes in key secretariat staff, free, fair, and credible elections will surely be compromised. I therefore call on the staff who have been adversely mentioned to step aside to allow this project team to function without interference. I'm extending an open invitation to the candidates to a meeting that I'll preside over so that they can talk. Once the Kenyan people see that their leaders are talking and are putting Kenya first, then we can douse the tension in the air. As the referee, I want to issue a stern warning to the players of this game on all sides that they should stop all attempts to interfere with the process. The failure to do this will result in consequences, as I've made up my mind to uphold the Constitution and the will of the people of Kenya, regardless of threats, intimidation, and pressure. As the referee, I want to issue a stern warning to the players of this game on all sides that they should stop all attempts to interfere with the process. The failure to do this will result in consequences, as I've made up my mind to uphold the Constitution and the will of the people of Kenya, regardless of threats, intimidation, and pressure. No one side is absolved from this, and that's why my warning goes to all parties involved. Let my commission and I do our job, and we shall deliver. Interfere as we have been doing, and we shall get stuck as a country.
Now, and still on IEBC, Chebukati's statement came hours after Commissioner Rosalind Kombe fled to the US amid what she referred to as death threats ahead of next week's presidential election rerun that is slated for October 26th. In a resignation letter, Kombe said that the IEBC was under political siege, unable to reach consensus or take any decisions. In a statement, Kombe said she had agonized over the decision to leave the IEBC because, quote-unquote, the Commission in its current state cannot guarantee a credible election. Now, she said IEBC members had been voting along partisan lines without discussing different issues on merit. The statement went on to say that commissioners and other IEBC personnel were facing intimidation by political actors and protesters, and that she did not feel safe enough to be able to return to Kenya in the foreseeable future.
Had gotten to a point whereby I felt that I had no more contribution to make because I only had one vote. And the more we continue voting on issues that are fundamental, the more I realize that as long as Chairman Chebukati continues to have only 2 votes, we cannot make progress in the Commission. We cannot guarantee a credible process come the 26th of October. You know, we've worked hard on material on this training. I've spent many months and weeks working with our very able staff to come up with the material for training. But when I visited Bondo, I visited Kisumu, I visited Homa Bay, and I realized what we were doing was that because of the fears that we were going to have our staff attacked, we had started reducing the time that we were going to be spending on the training of presiding officers. So if you are not going to be able to spend enough time to train the, presiding officers because of safety and security concerns, then how are you going to ensure that the same mistakes that were done by presiding officers on the 8th of August are not repeated? When every important issue that you have to deal with at the Commission, you have to vote, then there's no value you have anymore because it means you cannot have any serious discussions, for instance. You cannot discuss and say, look, we are having a situation in which we are having threats to the security of our staff that we are training, especially for me when I visited the field. And I came back and I said, these are the concerns we have. Can we delay the training so that we can be able to secure the places so that we don't put the lives of our staff at risk? And you find people still do not see that as something that is reasonable. So what I'm asking myself is that we are ready to go into an election, even if it's going to cost the lives of our staff and voters. So if you do not acknowledge that you have a problem, how can you then fix it? But for me, fundamentally, is that what we face in the country right now is a huge political crisis. It's a political crisis that needs to be resolved in a political manner. Throwing it to the Commission and expecting that the Commission that is under siege will be able to fix a political problem is a mistake. We as Kenyan people have to come together and try and find ways of resolving this political problem. It cannot be fixed by the Commission as currently constituted. It just cannot happen.
Let's now cross over to Liberia. With an economy 4 times the size it was when Salif took office in the year 2005, the gangs of drug-addicted youths who raped and mutilated their way across the nation during a civil war that ended in 2003 are a vivid but receding memory, yet the country is still one of the world's poorest. Now, it survived another existential crisis 3 years ago with an outbreak of the Ebola virus that overwhelmed its health services. Residents complain of corruption from officials and poor public services and say that while they are thankful for the peace that Johnson Sirleaf brought, they are excited about the prospect of change. Liberia, Africa's oldest republic, was founded by freed U.S. slaves in the 19th century. Expectations are high for a rebirth of the nation as it goes through this democratic process. Former soccer star George Weah and Vice President Joseph Boakai topped the first round and will face each other in a runoff next month to decide who will succeed Nobel Peace Prize winner Ellen Johnson Sirleaf.
I see myself working today. I never voted before, so I see myself voting. It makes me happy. I enjoy independence for voting. We want better future for us, our brother and sister, our children, our mother, better future for us. We all want to go to school, but no chance.
I've managed to reach the age of 40, but because I was a Liberian citizen living abroad in the States, I was never able to vote. It felt great, to be honest with you. It was, even though it's a very simple process, again, when you've been denied it for so long, even the simple things can give you the greatest amount of joy. So for me now, with my family here, I'm recently married, I have a young son, and we plan to make a go of it here in Liberia. So I have to be a part of the system.
Oh, I think the Liberian people have been considerably empowered over the past couple of decades, particularly over the past decade. And they understand very well that their role in choosing their leader is one of the major steps that need to be taken as we go forward in terms of reconciling our differences.
Over to Sierra Leone now, and recently launched, of course, that country recently launched its first ever oral cholera vaccination campaign targeting 500,000 people in that country, as thousands risk infection in emergency shelters and informal settlements with limited access to clean water and sanitation. Now, the country is administering the vaccine after suffering one of Africa's worst mudslides in August. Now, an estimated 500 people were killed when a mountain collapsed on the outskirts of Freetown, a capital of the West African country, which is recovering from the Ebola crisis. Sierra Leone's worst recorded cholera outbreak in 2012 killed almost 400 people and infected more than 25,000 others.
Tribal communities are a slum area of which people actually attract the disease at all times. So that is why today we are here back in the community just to issue the drugs to our people, because the previous one was just finished and this is the round 2 that we are taking on to them again today. And we are raising information to them that, and it's an awareness that they should always receive the medicine in a good faith, of which we help them prevent the cholera attack of itself.
This sick cholera, we don't get them before, where are the small? We said in 2010, we don't get them. It really bad off. But I beg anybody so far, whether they cancel, I advise anybody let it take.
The Minister of Health recognized this as a very important intervention, as an added protective measure to people using sanitation measures, but also promoting good hygiene practices as a way of preventing the risks of getting cholera in a country that already has a history of having had severe outbreaks.
Now, in Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa, the leader of pro-Biafran group that wants to break away from Nigeria failed to appear in court on Tuesday as his treason trial was scheduled to resume. Now, Namidi Kanu, who heads the indigenous people of Biafra movement, was nowhere to be seen as proceedings resumed at the Federal High Court in the capital, Abuja. Prosecutor Shuaibu Labaran said Kanu's absence was contrary to the order of the court. But the separatist leader's lawyer, Efeanyi Ejiofo, said, quote-unquote, I don't know where my client is. Judge Binta Nyako joined the case until November 20th, pending more information as to Kanu's whereabouts. Kanu and 3 other defendants who were remanded in custody are facing several charges linked to his calls for a separate state for the Igbo people, the majority in Nigeria's southeast.
Here and there, I granted a press release, which I issued a statement to that effect that the military is then invading his premises. So that was my last communication with him, and to date I've not heard from him. I don't know whether he's alive or dead. So today the matter came up, and traditionally the matter cannot go on in his abstention. So, and the court want to find out where he is. And we told the court our final application compelling the Chihuahua staff to produce him before this court. And that application has been slated for hearing on the 2nd of November 2017.
It's either a defendant appears in court when he's on bail, or his sureties must be invited to show cause, or failure of which they will have to forfeit the bail bond, And of course, the court will make a necessary order when the time comes in respect of the defendant who defaulted in appearing before the court.
Now, Zimbabwe has banned fruit and vegetable imports to preserve its dwindling reserves of hard currency, drawing immediate warnings of food shortages in the country. Now, the order, which followed a ban on maize imports in June, alarmed retailers and street dealers in the capital, Harare, who get much of their produce from neighboring South Africa. Now, the shutdown, which takes immediate effect, underlined the scale of the economic crisis in what was once one of Southern Africa's agricultural heartlands in the build-up to next year's national elections. Now, the Ministry of Agriculture says veteran President Robert Mugabe had made the order himself to stop the imports because, quote-unquote, once again, the West much-needed foreign currency. The order will let local farmers increase output. Many doubt Zimbabwe will be able to satisfy local demand by itself.
If this ban is effected, it will kill our business as street vendors because even though we produce apples, our customers prefer imported ones from South Africa, which we sell because they are better quality.
That was supposed to help local industry recapacitate, you see, but the local industry is different from the horticulture. This is a long-term industry. It's an industry where you start investing over a long period, not something you can do overnight. So I would say this is an ill-thought thing.
Now, families and supporters of the imprisoned Hirak members gathered this week to demand the release of the detainees. The National Support Committee of the Hirak movement in Morocco launched an appeal at a press conference organized at a lawyers' club in Rabat. Meanwhile, supporters of Morocco's Al-Hirak Al-Shabi movement shouted slogans outside the Casablanca tribunal Tuesday in support of members of the movement who are being detained and whose trial has been postponed once more. Now, joining the tribute was the father of jailed Hirak leader Nasser Ahmed Zafzafi, who expressed his grief and despair at his son's detention.
These trials are going to take a long time. These trials are creating a situation of tension, discomfort, political difficulties, which the country doesn't need. Honestly, don't need this at all, by any means. And an intervention by His Majesty the King would put an end to this crisis. As long as there are arrests and trials, there will be protests and support in every Moroccan city. Wherever there are arrests and trials, there are always sit-ins. Tomorrow, there will be a demonstration in front of Okasha prison to demand the liberation of those who are detained after the current protest, which is taking place in front of Casablanca court.
Now, let's now go over to Cameroon, where Greenpeace lowered its anchor in Cameroon's port of Douala on Monday in the first leg of its tour through Central Africa as its team spoke with members of pro-environment NGOs, tribal chiefs and industry leaders to discuss ecology and the protection of the Congolese rainforest. And after the Amazon, the Congo forest is the second biggest rainforest in the world, but it's drying out due to climate change. And scientists are unsure what effects this might have. Jungles like the Congo forest are essential in the fight against climate change. However, due to a mix of civil war, unstable governments and poor infrastructure, research into how the Congo forest will react to change has been limited.
In Congo's basin where Cameroon is, there is a problem of appropriation of land because our land is still fertile and many multinational companies want to set up agro-businesses and they can come to destroy our forest to install big surfaces for plantations.
If we do not design and define proper ways of protecting it, the whole community is losing out. The whole community is losing out, and the whole continent is losing out.
Must make the companies aware, help them to manage the resources, because the massive destruction of natural resources doesn't help us in any way. The goal is to exploit the natural resources in a regulated manner.
Well, and that report from Cameroon takes us to a very short break. But when we come back, we'll discuss that studio discussion tonight, which has everything to do with Kenya's election. Everybody's asking what next for the country. These after one of the IEBC commissioners, Dr. Rosalind Akombe, resigned and fled to the US. This comes also after NASA leader Raila Odinga withdrew from the presidential contest. I have experts in studio. I'm going to reintroduce them after this very short break. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.